Well, it's the Live Wild podcast, and I'm your host, Hilary Rose. Today, I am delighted to chat to broadcaster, journalist, and award-winning novelist, Noelle McCarthy. And Noelle just happens to be my old school pal. We chat about her incredible book, Grand, Becoming My Mother's Daughter. It's poignant and funny and so original, and it gives the reader a nostalgic idea of what growing up in Cork in the 80s and 90s was really like. Noelle now lives in New Zealand with her husband and daughter. She produces award-winning podcasts and is writing another book about her school days. And that one I can't wait to read.
Then when you're dealing with siblings, it's like everyone grows up in a different house. You know, like everyone has a different relationship. Like my mother had a completely different relationship with all of us. Mm-hmm. I was the eldest girl. She and I were, you know, the only thing that really brought us together was Mrs. Breen, actually, our English teacher. Yeah. And one of the things I remembered when I was writing Grand was how much she loved Mrs. Breen, how much, you know, they had this beautiful relationship, just the two of them, you know. And my mother was my champion, you know, like she absolutely was. We'd knock heads, but, you know, she and Mrs. Breen were the two people who believed in me.
Noelle is just brilliant, so gracious and so amazing, and I'm still in awe of her all these years later, just like I was when we were in school. So I hope you enjoy the chat just as much as I did catching up with Noelle. It's Noelle McCarthy, award-winning author, journalist, broadcaster, and podcaster, and just happens to be my old schoolmate. It's Noelle McCarthy, and she's on the Live Wild podcast.
And you look exactly the same as you did when we went to the Burren in third year. Do you remember? For geography. I'm sorry, I had to say that. I had to say that. Look, that is totally your call, Hilary. That is absolutely, that may be something that comes up a little bit later in this conversation. We shall see.
Yes, I concur. Oh my goodness, there was some bad habits forming even in those days, wasn't there? You look the same as school as well, but more glamorous. You always had this glamour. You know, even in our school days, you had this just regal air and glamour. And I actually remember looking at you going, she's so amazing. How does she do that?
You know, that's so funny. I mean, thank you. I won't ruin the compliment, Hilary, because that's beautiful. But I've been writing another book and I've been writing about school years, you know, like those times. And I was thinking, geez, I was awkward, you know, like that awkwardness that you feel as a teenager in your own skin. And I always thought you were the coolest. I mean, you had music. You were always the one with the mixtapes. You had the Henry's mixtapes. I remember you were so cool. I mean, honestly, we were like, you were operating at a much higher level.
But then I don't think I was. I mean, I was terrible at school. Sure. I was the ultimate rebel. I just didn't. You know, I did a lot of self-sabotaging in school, like, teachers, I didn't want to be part of this. It didn't suit my learning needs, you know. And I always admired you because I remember watching you. And I think it must have been when we were graduating and you gave a speech. Do you remember that?
Oh, wow. No. I mean, I remember us graduating. I remember we all wrote all over each other's school shirts. Do you remember that? Like that was just a thing. Did everyone do that in the 90s or was it just?
So
I don't know if it was. I just remember I do remember giving a speech of some sort and someone had drawn a giant willy on the back of my shirt. So I do remember keeping my back to the wall while I did that one. Yeah. I won't say who drew it. I don't actually remember.
I had that school shirt. I had that school shirt for up until recently. I think I had it in a box in the attic. I might still have it. I was pulling it out.
Can you send me some photos? That would be very good it'd be very helpful for the memoir writer.
Actually, I will. I have got photographs of us like on our desks, like bent over desks and someone writing on your back. So I will. I'll have a look at it and see what I can dig out for you. But I remember you giving that speech and I was like, you're such an orator. You were so amazing at it. And I was like, she's using words that I don't even know. And I'm graduating from school and this is really embarrassing because I think I should know them.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. I loved public speaking. You know, I was a bit of a geek, I think, at school. And I found the other nerds. So, you know, there was a few of us. But I did always remember we used to have those public speaking competitions, which I think a lot of all girls schools did. I don't know if they still do. And that was very much a place where I felt really comfortable and happy and in a funny sort of way, set me up for work later on. But you never know what's going to happen, right?
Totally. And that was a question I was going to ask you, because I do remember Mrs. Breen. Remember Mrs. Breen, the English teacher, and you reference her in your gorgeous book. And I remember her being so invested in you at that time. Do you think if she hadn't been that what kind of impact do you think that she had on your life? Because it feels like she really believed in you. She really invested in you. And if you didn't have an adult like that investing in you, do you think your life would have turned out slightly different?
Oh, I love that you've asked me about this, because I'm so passionate about it, because I absolutely think my life would have been different without Miss Breen. So she was our English teacher, for people who didn't go to school with me and Hilary.
Yeah.
She was an English teacher at the school that we both went to in Cork. And she believed in me, from the time before I believed in myself. I think I was 14 when I first went into her English class. It was in second year of secondary school. And I remember when I left school, she gave me a copy of James Joyce Ulysses and wrote "Reach for the Stars" on it. And it was the biggest vote of confidence ever that someone would think I'd finish Ulysses, right? Which I have more or less.
I was going to say, have you finished it yet?
Yeah, let's go ahead and say I have, definitely. But she used to give up her Saturday mornings and take us down to the Metropole Hotel. There was me and a few other girls from the year who did public speaking, and she just backed me, you know. And I think in your life, it's true, isn't it? If you have someone who sees something in you before you see it yourself, then it almost becomes possible, it's like if they can see it, you can be it. And she just acted. The other thing she did, and I think this is so precious, like from a mentor, is she kind of acted like I was there already. She just acted like, oh, you can do this. You can stand up in front of the national debating competition or whatever it was. You can read Ulysses, and it was just and it's funny, we're still emailing now. And it's just been, that's one of the great love stories in my life, like one of the great relationships in my life, to have that. We didn't talk for years and years. And it was funny. I remember meeting her when I was younger, and she was like, come on, get out there, get out into the world. Get out into the world. That's what you need to be doing. You need to be in the world. And she was amazing. So I do think that. And I think there's someone like that there for everyone, isn't there? And you remember them. Like, you remember the first person who said to you, you can do this, go out there, nail it. And you walk a bit taller.
Absolutely. And I think in turn, it's so important to do that for others as well.
Yeah.
If you see someone that's flagging slightly in their confidence, it's, even if it's, peer to peer, female to female, whatever it might be, your partner, just to say, hey, no, you can do this, you've got this. And like you said, it just kind of straightens the spine a little bit. And you go, all right, I've got permission.
Well, you're the version. Yeah, exactly. You get permission. That's it exactly, isn't it? And you become the version of yourself that they see you as being.
Which is such a beautiful thing. I want to talk about your book for a little bit. It's so, Noelle, it's so beautiful. It's called Grand, Becoming My Mother.
Thank you.
And normally I have a visual copy of it. You have a copy of it. You might hold it up. Normally I do. Yeah. Because this will go on YouTube eventually. Look at it, it's so gorgeous. Normally,
back to front there, yeah.
It's been passed around our girl group. It's gone on holidays. So
yes, Gran needs to go on holidays because it's winter in New Zealand at the moment and it's freezing cold here. So I want Gran to be in Greece. I want it to be in France. I want it to be in Italy, or just West Cork.
I believe it's in Portugal right now.
Perfect. Yes, that's where Gran should be.
It's been to Dubai. It's been to Lanzarote. It's been all over the place. It's the same copy, well worn, but it's so beautiful.
You're getting the value out of it, girl. I love that.
Don't buy it. We're not going to support it.
No, pass it around.
We'll just pass it around. But it was so amazing to read it. What a trip down memory lane was the first thing. But it was just the nuance of the book really struck me, Noelle. And and the honesty, the raw honesty. I thought you were the bravest person in the world to write that book. Was it a difficult decision? So the book, obviously, for people who don't know, is about your, complicated relationship with your mum and her complicated relationship with alcohol, and subsequently your own complicated relationship with alcohol. It's so nuanced and so complex. Like, my question, did a publisher come to you and say, hey, do you have a book in you? Or was this book always going to happen? Was it coming from you?
It was massively surprising that was what I wrote about Hilary. Like, I always wanted to write, and I'd been trying to find, after I had my daughter in 2017. So up until that point, I'd been broadcasting pretty much full time here in New Zealand. I started out in radio, and my husband and I, after we had our daughter, set up a company that makes podcasts. And we do those sort of long form narrative ones that take like 100 years to make, like masses of time and energy. And you never make any money with them, but they're great. They're really fun.
They win awards, but put food on the table.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had set up our company. So we were doing that. And I love writing, and, I had been able to do columns and all sorts of things, do journalism. But I had it in my head, that I had tried to write bits of novels. They were terrible, really bad. And what happened in 2019 was my mum was diagnosed with cancer. She was diagnosed with lung cancer, and it was an aggressive cancer. And so she got sick very quickly. And I was in New Zealand and she was in Cork. And, there was distance there, and it was hard to talk. So there was a lot going on. And kind of around that time, I just started writing down these little sort of vignettes. Like, they were just vignettes about like my childhood, or the time she bought me a rabbit. And, that's in the book, or things that I remembered, but I wasn't even sure if I was remembering them properly. I was like, what is this? And I showed them to my husband, who's an author, and, I trust his judgment. And he said, keep going with that. Like, that's kind of interesting. I haven't really read you writing like this before. Keep writing it. And so I did, and I kept writing it. And then in January of 2020, I think it was, I entered a competition, actually. The Fish Publishing, which is based in West Cork, has the thing was they had a short memoir section. So most competitions are short story competitions, but this one was for memoir. So I was thinking, great, okay, I have some bits. And so I sent it in, and it won the competition, which I kind of wasn't expecting. And that was a bit complicated because I'd written about everyone. I hadn't changed anyone's name. I put my own name to it. I'd written a whole heap of stuff about, the early years of getting sober, and like before I got sober, there's a whole heap of stuff there that I was not expecting. It was that old story. But anyway, once I got my head around that, I just kept writing, and then eventually had a conversation with a publisher here who was like, look, I'm quite interested in this, but as a full memoir, like as a memoir of your life. And it was really my husband who said, why don't you? I remember he came into the kitchen. I was in the kitchen. He walked into the kitchen. He said, the book is about you and your mother. It's about both of you, not just you and not just her. It's about the two of you, and it's called Grand. And that was it then. I was like,
wow.
Okay. And he's good at titles. So it was a good title. And I thought, I have to live up to that, like I have to. And I was terrified because I was like, oh God, that has to really work now. And so the funny thing that happened then, of course, was like two things happened. Firstly, my mom died in March of 2020.
Sorry,
pretty much a week. Thank you. Pretty much a week after that, New Zealand went into lockdown.
Oh,
so we had like one of the strictest, I know it was strict in Ireland too, but we had an incredibly sort of intense lockdown here in New Zealand. So it meant like that John and Eve and I were in this bubble, and, she couldn't go to daycare. Our work, we couldn't travel to do interviews, and we were still working on a couple of projects, but we were on a go slow, because we couldn't really do much. So I just wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and that was it then. It was written. I wrote it probably in retrospect very fast. Now that I'm writing another book, it's really slow. It's the first one I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's done. But and I think that was partly to do with grief as well, because like one of the things grief does that I never knew about is it changes your relationship to time. time and grief are, it turns time inside out. I had all of this sort of manic energy. I was writing all the time for different reasons. I'd be on the phone to Ireland, so I'd be up all night. It was just a very kind of intense experience. And the thing that happened for me as well was that, I didn't realize that by writing my memories, my mom would come back. I would go back to that time and actually have her with me. And I loved that, those weren't always easy things to write, because both of us extremely sort of complicated people, but it was addictive, it was an addictive experience to be able to go back and have that time again.
Like you're getting to, be with her again, because it's such a delicate and intricate entanglement that mothers and daughters have, particularly if there's a mother wound has occurred. It's such a messy web of a child loving and needing their mother, in contrast to what the mother is able to provide for them emotionally at the time, given the circumstances. I think you can only step back and look at it as an adult, really, with a more mature mind in it. And I think it's so tricky to navigate. It's a very tricky one that I've had to navigate in a different set of circumstances. Did you feel that you began that work prior to the book and her passing, or was it happening during it?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I couldn't have written Grand before doing that stuff. People would say to me when I first started doing press for the book, they were like, was it like therapy to write it? And I was like, no, I got all the therapy before I wrote it.
There was a decade of therapy happening there.
Yeah, a lot. And during and, and ongoing.
Yeah.
Because, oh God, yeah. I needed to do all that so that I could be playful and creative and enjoy myself. I found this a very enjoyable book, like as enjoyable a book about alcoholism and intergenerational trauma can be, I had a great time doing that because of all the things that had happened in my life leading up to it, and part of the reason why this book took me by surprise and why I thought I would never, ever write about my mother was because I was really ashamed of our relationship. There were years there when I was in New Zealand before I left, when I was in Cork, where I just felt a great wound, like you say, like a real sadness that I couldn't get on with my mother, that I couldn't get on with her the way my friends had relationships with their mothers, because you always look and it was, I had to work through all of that before I could even think about writing about any of it, I had to know and then it was my own mothering, like my own parenting was coming into really stark relief for me as well with my daughter because she was so young, she was one of the things that happened was that, becoming a mother of a daughter. And one of the first things I wrote about, when I was writing those little pieces was about the experience of when my daughter was born, like very soon after she was born, she was about 10 weeks old. We brought her home to Ireland. And I had that experience of seeing myself shift in my dynamic with my mother, I just went back. I went back into the background and suddenly there's this child, there's this granddaughter, and that relationship was an incredibly kind of joyful and healing thing for everyone, for everyone. And I had no anticipation of that. I just thought, look at me, I'm bringing back my baby. It's all about me. And they're like, get out of the way. Give us the child. Totally. Give us this child. Yeah. Totally. Couldn't care less. Yeah. And that was great, and that was kind of when I think about it now. And then I also see, there were resonances there around a new baby as well, because, without wanting to give away too much of the book, part of my mother's story and my family story is the losses that she'd had before me, and these children that kind of haunted me, certainly throughout my childhood. So to see her with this baby, was, it was remarkable. It was a remarkable thing. And it obviously set something off in my brain that started ticking.
You mentioned intergenerational trauma, and there's an awful lot of talk about it, which I think is wonderful chatter about it so that we can kind of get our heads around it. Do you feel like you have healed a lot of intergenerational trauma with your actions?
God, I mean, for me personally, I suppose I'd like to say that I'm aware of it, and I'm aware of what we carry, like as women and as the daughters of mothers who suffered, who suffered things that we didn't suffer necessarily. When I think of the Ireland we grew up in, I don't think divorce was far away. There was access to contraception. There was, more of a freedom certainly than my mother experienced, I think, and I didn't take any of that into account in the antagonistic relationship I had with her, certainly as a teenager, and now I remember my daughter was born in 2017, right? And that was around the time, like pretty much bang on around the time all that Harvey Weinstein stuff started happening, it was the beginning of Me Too. And I remember just walking around the place feeling sick a lot of the time, like feeling physically sick, like someone had kicked me in the stomach, and thinking, what is this? Like, why is this so visceral? Like, why do I feel this in my solar plexus? And, one of the things that I'm writing about at the moment is trying to unpack that a bit, like trying to think, why was that moment so incredibly resonant? And how much of that is mine? And how much of that is because of what I experienced? Because, I was in media and broadcasting throughout the early 2000s and kind of on into that period. There was a lot of stuff that went on that, even not to me necessarily, but stuff that I saw that wasn't great, questionable stuff. But then also you look at our legacy, like as daughters of mothers, and all the things that they experienced, or our mothers' friends or our grandmothers. And suddenly it feels like the weight of that stuff is coming down on you, like it's coming down on top of you. And a lot of the time it is about, I don't know what you do, but it's like you have to take a breath, don't you? And go like, what's mine? What's mine here? And 100%. What's just this sort of inheritance, what's coming down the line to me?
And how do you let it go? How do you process it? And not brush it under the carpet, but how do you go, okay, I acknowledge that this is here, I'm witnessing this, but it's not necessarily mine to carry either. I can purge it, but I'm not going to carry it. You don't have to,
And it's that too, I think, and it is, around that time, not long after that time, you had repealed the 8th in Ireland, and I was so proud and so, emotional. Like I feel emotional talking about it. My mother didn't vote. Like she didn't even have a bank card. She wasn't really into society, like as a participant, and that was her sort of, she was particularly independent minded person. But I remember her ringing me and saying, I voted for you, because you told me to, and you asked me to. And it was just, that really moves me, because things can change, can't they? Like things can and do change. And it's hard. I think that work of like legacy repair is like, it's heavy lifting, but it can happen too.
But I suppose in a sense, you doing your own healing and recovering from alcoholism, that breaks the chain, that breaks the cycle. What a gift
100%.
Your lineage to even have done that.
And it doesn't feel like that if you're doing it. Like when I came, exactly. When I came into recovery, I just wanted to be a better drinker. I was like, I'm just going to take a few weeks off and sort myself out and just get better at this, because everyone else seems to be able to drink without consequences, the sorts of consequences I'm having and the sorts of problems that I'm having. But there must be something wrong with me. That's kind of what I thought. I never thought, okay, this is the problem. This is the issue.
That's amazing, because that was one of the questions I had for you, was like, was it a light bulb moment? Like, okay, then this is a very hard thing to okay, I'm an alcoholic, I really got to deal with this. So you didn't go into it that way. You were thinking, I'm just going to take a break here and see because this is causing me some problems? Or do you feel like deep down it was ruminating inside you?
I think I knew. I think there'd been a bell ringing for a while. You know, I had probably what you might say were a lot of yets. Like there were things that hadn't happened yet to me. And so I was always kind of able to say, oh, well, you know, I haven't lost my job and I haven't lost a relationship, but, you know, I hadn't lost my job because I was a contractor and I didn't work every day, and I hadn't lost a relationship because I wasn't in a relationship. So, you know, like if that
and you
stuff
were really
didn't
high profile in your work as well at that time. So, I mean, you were, very valuable at that point.
Well, I guess I
not
mean,
at
the
that
thing
point.
about yeah, at that point when I used to be. No, I think the thing about media as well is that I think when there are certain jobs that, you know, you can just showing up, you can fake that for a while, you know, like you can just show up and talk, or just show up and be there, and you can tell yourself that that's good enough. You know, you can say, okay, that's fine. I've never missed a day. I've never slept in. I've never done this. You know, all of those things. You can say those to yourself, and then you might sleep in. You know, but actually that's fine because I wasn't that late. Or you might feel awful all the time, which was kind of my situation, whereby even if I went out to a lovely party or a dinner or whatever and had a lovely time, I was just constantly beset by guilt and shame and anxiety all the time. And so, you know, at a certain point, you can exclude all the other variables and alcohol's still there. So you go, okay, maybe there's something going on here. And that was kind of the point I was at when I came into recovery, which was kind of, okay, I'll give this a try, you know, you know, do everyone a favor by turning up here. And it's like, actually, it's yourself. You're doing the favor to. So it amazes me now when I look back at how I was kind of carried through that, you know, because I certainly didn't know what I was doing. I was, you know, full of indignation that I might have a problem with drinking. You know, it just struck me as this horrible irony because it had been such a source of tension and discord in my family. So I just thought, you know, that can't be me. I've seen this and I know what this is, and it can't be me. I can't be repeating this cycle, you know. So that took a bit of, you know, I had to swallow that. Like that took a while.
Imagine. Did you discuss it with your mother at all at the time or ever?
No, because we're Irish, so we didn't talk about it for a long time. But, you know, I think I said in the book, I remember overhearing her. I came home to Cork. I think I was about a year sober, or like, you know, maybe, around a year. I'd been a year. And I came home to Cork, and they never said anything to me, my family at this point, my parents, you know, but they were just very nice to me. And then I heard her on the phone to someone, and she was saying, oh, Noelle doesn't drink at all. And I just thought, oh, you know, like, and she made it sound like I never had. Which made me laugh. You know, and I remember I was leaving, and I don't know if I could say this without crying now because it just always makes me cry, but I was leaving and I was at Cork Airport, and my dad always, you know, the way the dads always like at the last minute buy you a pack of crisps or something, like a ham sandwich or something for the plane. And he was doing that. He was giving me like a bag of Monster Munch or something. And he's like, I'm so proud of you. And it's just like, I cried the whole way home to New Zealand. You know, I did. Yeah. So they knew, you know, they knew. And then as time went by as well, we talked about it a bit more, you know, like it just became a kind of, this is how I am and this is what I do.
For your family, was it difficult for them when you were writing the book? Like, were they concerned about it in any sense?
Oh, yeah, I think so. You know, the way I think about this now is that, you know, I'm proud of writing because that's what I want to, because I'm a writer and I love writing, and you know, that's what I wanted to write. But I also understand that when you're writing nonfiction, like when you're writing memoir, you're writing about real people. and that has real life consequences. You know, it's very exposing for people. And, you know, I think, you know, it was one thing in New Zealand. The book came out first in New Zealand, and I had offered my siblings and my dad and you know the manuscript while I was working on it, pretty much just at the end. And you know, and I'd said to them, if there's anything you think you don't want in here, I'll change it, you know. And they didn't, you know, they're like, that's fine. My siblings who read it, you know, some of them didn't want to read it, so that was fine too, because you know, I was aware we were grieving my mom as well, like, so that's complicated. And then I showed it to my mum's siblings as well, who, you know, were so kind to read it and to get a heads up about it, and, you know, so that they could know that it was coming and understand it. And they were really respectful. Like they were incredibly respectful, because I think, you know, that's a very exposing thing. Like, and that's, especially the stuff about my mom and her mother, that is at a slight distance from me, because that's, you know, that's another generation. But I, you know, there are people who live through that too. Like that's their immediate family. So I understand that is sensitive as well. And the other thing, I guess, as well, then when you're dealing with siblings, is like everyone grows up in a different house. You know, like everyone
100%.
Everyone has a different relationship. Like my mother had a completely different relationship with all of us. I was the eldest girl. She and I were, you know, the only thing that that really brought us together was Mrs. Breen, actually, our English teacher, Hilary. Yeah. And one of the things I remembered when I was writing Gran was how much she loved Mrs. Breen, how much, you know, they had this beautiful relationship, just the two of them. You know, and my mother was my champion, you know, like she absolutely was. We'd knock heads, but, you know, she and Mrs. Breen were the two people who believed in me and went to every public speaking event and did that. And I remember that because as a teenager, I hadn't thought about that, you know, like I just thought about all the ways she wasn't what I wanted her to be. So I was mindful as well with my siblings. Like they had a different mother to me. It's always different, isn't it? Like that's part of parenting, I think.
I 100% agree. You can grow up in the same household and have a completely different experience. Because it's about where you are in the family as well, you know, and kind of, and also your roles. Like when I go home to Ireland, I'm in a particular role in my family, right? Like because I'm the eldest, and, you know, that's who I am there. And it's really interesting because I live far away from my family. Yeah. So sometimes when I come home, it's sort of like, whoa, this is incredibly disorienting to be in a family again, like quite a big family. Yeah, and it's so interesting. I loved reading the book because, like, my dad came from Blarney Street as well. So, and I would have spent a lot of my childhood around Blarney Street. It was such a nostalgia. But, you know, family on Blarney Street, that's a different breed entirely, you know. It's thick. It's thick.
Absolutely. And there's so much pride. Like people are proud. And I mean, this is Cork as well. Like, you know, it's like, I'm not from Ireland, I'm from Cork, actually. You know, it's like, it's a whole other thing of, you know, that intense association with place, like with place and people, all of that. Like that is, and that's, you know, as I travel in the world, like I see that is absolutely, you know, it's singular, like that. Not everywhere is like that.
I just couldn't get over it. I mean, that book, it was so beautiful. I read it on holidays, and I was cursing you by the pool because it was like a kid's pool party blaring in the background. My kids going, "Hey, Mom," and there's me streaming with tears going, "Oh, just 1 second, just put the glasses on." It was so joyous and so poignant and so tragic and so wonderful. But what really struck me was the nostalgia. How did you manage to pull that together? It was 80s and 90s Cork. Your attention to detail, I felt like I was there. I could smell it. I could smell Cork City. You know, it was remarkable.
The river, right? Do you know what's so funny, Hilary, as you say that? Like I have this image of you in my head at the Half Moon Club. It must have been like late 90s. And you're playing Your Love Is My Love. Like it was the last song, and you had like a white top on, and you are the DJ, and we've all got our hands in the air, and you know, those moments are indelible for me. Like I can't forget them. Like, and you think I would forget a lot of them because I mean I did drink a lot.
Yeah, well, I don't even remember that moment. I don't remember.
I just remember it. It was because of the. I mean, I think people in nightclubs did a really good job of the lighting. Like, I think the lighting was very good in the Half Moon. It was very good in the Savoy. You know, so you have these moments that are lit, like they are. And to me, I suppose they were cinematic. You know, they were, I don't know, I think as well, like there was always a part of me that was thinking about things as scenes, you know, like there's always a part of your head that's going, okay, remember this. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it means it's hard to turn off my brain at night, but you know, when you're thinking of the colors and the framing and all of it. And the other thing about Cork, I guess, is that because I'm away from it, it's very vivid to me. Like I wrote all of that in lockdown in New Zealand. And then I was in the horrors going, oh God, did I get that right? Like, you know, and I'd get my sister to send me photographs of things and, you know, listen to people on RTE because I was like, is that what people sound like? You know, all of those things were at a distance. And I do think, you know, there's like hundreds of years of tradition of people romanticizing Ireland from a distance. Like, I didn't necessarily want to do that, but I did want to show, like Cork in the 90s was a young people's city. Like it was a very, I mean, you were in the thick of it. Like you were cool. DJing, you know, it was very cool. It was very progressive, I think. And again, that was something I think I definitely took for granted because I didn't know any different, you know, like I didn't know until I left, really, you know, how cool it had been. And there's something in that about growing up, isn't there? Like there's something, and I don't know, that, you know, like I just spent so much time in the body shop that all those smells.
It's gone. I walked past it the other day, Noelle, and I remember when you used to the body shop, I went, yes, just
the little bath balls and the, you know,
and the little pearls, and then you'd have the shop spray.
I used to sign all the petitions. I used to sign all the stop testing on animals. That was my, you know, that was a Saturday, and White Musk and Dewberry. You know, and you know the funny thing about that is a lot of readers in New Zealand have the same touchstones. You know, they're like, oh, I used to listen to, you know, so too, and you know, I used to wear White Musk. So that's kind of an upside of globalization.
There's a common thread for us.
Yes.
Hey, if you're enjoying this episode and you'd like to show your support, if you like, you can buy us a coffee using the Buy Me a Coffee app or online at buymeacoffee.com/Live Wild Podcast, or just click the link in our show notes, it will take you there. Alternatively, you can also donate crypto to the show using the BitDonate app or at bitdonate.com and search for Live Wild, or just follow the link in the show notes. Either or both those donations really help us make the best show possible. And as always, you can like, subscribe, and share the show with your mates or on social media. Thank you so much for your help.
I had a question for you. Oh, it's gone now. That'll be the perimenopause kicking in.
We love it, don't we? We just love it.
We're reminding
hot flush over here, just having a little hot flush, thinking about when I was in my 20s, when I was 19 in Cork. Ooh.
If we're recalling Body Shop and White Musk, you can perimenopause right now.
You can date us. Yes, exactly.
No, it's gone. I'll have to come back to it. Do you have a writing routine? Because I mean, you talked about the lockdown, but like, I suppose there's going to be writers that will tune into this and be really interested in actually your process. Do you have a specific writing routine that you try to stick to, or a formula that you try to stick to?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm on a new sort of buzz at the moment because we are, you know, because we have like a day job making series. And then there's other stuff that comes up, you know, just like life stuff, where I've started writing early. Like I'll get up at about 5 and have those 2 hours from 5 to 7. And that means that I always have those and I don't have to stress about it. And it does mean like I go to bed early. This is the latest I've been up for donkey's years. It's great. I love it. It's like the Half Moon Club all over again. But But yeah, I write longhand. I suppose that's something.
Oh, wow.
I write it all longhand, and that's because I started doing that. I'm still so new to writing that I have these tricks and kind of things that I do to tell myself that don't worry about this. It's not too serious. And there's something about just writing with a pen that frees me up. I can be quite free with it.
So interesting.
And then when I type it in, I am editing it. I'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, that's no, not that. But
I think with longhand writing, I have similar kind of theory about art as well, that it's the neurological hand-eye coordination. It does something to the brain. It unlocks parts of the brain, I think. Whereas typing, I don't think does that. It's too speedy. It needs to be a kind of almost an embodied process for it to come out right. Like
I love that.
If I'm typing or if I'm voice noting something, it's like I'm speeding through it. So there's not enough nuance in it. Mm-hmm. But if I put pen to paper, I really have to think about it, So it's more of a process.
Yes. And there was something about the grant where I just wanted to be as honest as I could be, like really honest. And there was something about writing longhand that meant I couldn't lie to myself or to anyone else. It's almost like writing to your diary.
I was going to say,
this is the truth, like this is my truth anyway, because, it's a subjective thing. But yeah, so longhand is great. And it makes it's almost like it's a little secret, and you've got your notebook and you can kind of bring it around. And then I guess when I'm typing it in, that's the bit where I'm just starting to think, how does this sound? How does this read? I'm thinking about a reader. I'm thinking a bit more, not like it's still a draft, but that initial thing is just for me. It's just, it feels like it's just for me.
That's so interesting. So the question has finally come back to me, and it was
good.
Thankfully, it came from somewhere. It was a little note you had at the end of the book, Grant. I thought it was probably one of the most important things that you wrote. I don't have it to hand to actually read it, right? But you said something like it was a picture taken of a carpet, and it was your perception of the carpet, and you were absolutely like 100% convinced, recalling from memory, that the carpet that you were describing was a certain way. Yet when I think it was your sister gave you a photograph and that carpet was in the photograph, it was different. And so that highlighted to you that it was your perception of events. I thought that was possibly one of the most important things that you wrote.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that, because that was kind of that was right at the end, right at the end. I'd written the body of the book, and I can just, shall I read it
please,
to you?
Please do. Yeah.
So this is the author's note right at the end of the book. And it says, not long ago, I wrote a passage about a party in Cork. I described what we did and what we said, finishing with the memory of my mother and father dancing with me and their new granddaughter across the swirly patterned floor of a hotel function room. It was only when I watched a video of that night that I saw the hotel carpet had a geometric print, not swirly, like I had said. By then, I was nearly finished writing this book, and that geometric carpet went off like a bomb in my head. I didn't even think to question my memories until then. I had been sure it was a swirly carpet. I could see my feet moving across it. I remembered it so well. I want to believe that my version is the objective version of events, but I have to accept, the geometric carpet forces me to accept, that I'm just one witness, doing my best to get a story straight at a distance, over time, and in pace with an interior landscape that's constantly changing. And that's it, right? Like, I realized that. I watched the video, I'd written the book. And I was like, oh my God, that wasn't a swirly carpet.
Yeah.
I can't publish this. Like, what if everything is wrong? Like, what if everything? And I remember talking to my editor about it. And she was like, no, that is, she said, acknowledge it, acknowledge it. Just say that, because these are subjective records. This memoir, I love memoir. That's my favorite record. It's my favorite kind of genre of writing. And I think what you have to do is own your blind spots and your subjectivities and your grudges and your, everything. And talking about a relationship that was as important to me as the relationship with my mother, and as complicated and as fraught and as, subjective. It depended on what you saw at any given time, what version of the relationship. I forgot all the stuff with Mrs. Breen until it came time to write the book, So it was really important to me to put that author's note in, and, and acknowledge that this is an imperfect record. It's what I remember, and I'm never going to remember everything. It's not a history. It's not, I did history at college, and I know the difference between memoir and history. Like, I'm not saying this is the definitive version of events, but what happens when you're a writer is that you're the one who puts the book out, right? And so, especially if someone's died, sometimes your version can be the version people take to be true, and you just have to acknowledge that as well, I think.
And like writing a book like that from your point of view is a perfect reflection of your point of view of your relationship with your mother. Not everyone would have seen that. Certainly in school, we never saw that.
No. That's right.
In school,
Yeah, that's right.
Like I was quite... I was really shocked, actually, to read what I was like, I had no idea Noelle was going through any of that in school. None of us do.
No, we never do.
Yeah, it's an important part of your story. And I think it's justified to write it and depict it in whatever way is relevant to you, But I did love the footnote at the end. I thought that's so important. So important.
And the carpet in the Maldron Hotel.
But of all things, that's a real, eye for detail. Like, the carpet like this. I know it was like this because I know I can get a grip on stuff as well and go, no, this is right because I know and I remember it. And then I go, look at this anymore.
And it's good to question that. You see, the thing that I was worried about was all the stuff that I didn't even know to question, the stuff that I've been. So it's really good to hear from someone in Cork that Cork was like that in the 90s and the 80s.
Yes, I think you nailed it. It just brought me right back to St. Angela's School, brought me right back to being in the city. The city playground, we grew up there, It
was an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
It was so really, really, really beautiful. I don't think I want it for my daughter, but it was really...
No, I mean, I think schooling's so funny, isn't it? Like, education's changed so much, theories of education, and kind of to be more, it was so one size fits all, wasn't it? Like, I think of what you were saying about, the learning that was suited to you. I really liked exams. I really liked learning things off by heart because it was very regimented and kind of a safe space for me. But like, I think I wouldn't expect everyone to be like that, like that. But it's not a life skill either, unless you want to keep sitting exams.
But it kind of is when you talk about learning things off. The irony is I ended up in a career where I have to learn things off. It's the irony. I have to learn like 25 pages of dialogue and text. That was a skill that only really came to me as an actor. I did not have that muscle in school. No way. Well,
yes.
I didn't flex it, but
you were always so expressive and stylish, Hilary, and you were always your own person, even if you look at those school photos where all of the individuality is sort of sucked out of all of us, we're all standing there in our green blazers. You were you, when I look at headshots of you now, I see you.
Wow,
that was
that's so kind. It's so kind because when I think that of other people, I think they really, again, it's perception based. It's like I look at other people and go, God, they really stood out in school. Like you, for example, I really felt that you did. It's so. This is such a lovely trip down memory lane. It's so gorgeous.
It is
such a massage for the ego. So thank you.
100%. We never talk about going to the burn.
Oh. What the teachers didn't know. I mean, I do have a recollection. I have a recollection of us. Yes, okay, we all went drinking, right?
There was that.
There was bad habits.
junior cert year, wasn't it?
Yes, junior cert year.
I was just very impressed with us. They hadn't a clue. We kept it under wraps, didn't we? We just kept it.
Still
kept
don't.
it
They either turned a blind eye or they just didn't have a clue. But I do remember being in the hotel, and all of us coming into the hotel absolutely pissed and entertaining the crowd in the hotel. Do you remember that? I have this recollection of the whole class who were all annihilated drunk at the age of whatever, 14, 15, standing up in front, like going into the hotel, like entertainment area and just taking over the whole bar. And there was a couple of guests there. We sang songs.
Mm-hmm. We sang songs for like American tourists. We were meant to be in there doing karst formation on our field trip, doing our etchings. And somehow things went a little bit off piste, and then some Americans got some top-notch entertainment.
Absolutely. And the teachers going, God, they're in great form tonight, aren't they?
Up early now tomorrow, girls. Up early now tomorrow. We'll go to the Cliffs of Moher.
Oh, wow. Wow. It was amazing. I love that you ended up, I mean, okay, so you moved from Cork to New Zealand because you'd worked in the iconic Cafe Paradiso, which is still in Cork, which is amazing. And you had a Kiwi boss, I think, that suggested that, you might do well over there, or you might find something you're looking for. And sure enough, I believe they were probably right. But you ended up going into radio. I love that.
I did. Totally accidentally. I was working in a restaurant in Auckland, and I worked with a man who I thought I was going to come back because I registered to do an MPhil in UCC, which I'd taken a leave of absence from, like a year off. And I knew while I was away, I thought, I want to switch to journalism. I want to do that. It was DCU at the time. I think it's called something, or no, DIT had a master's in journalism, but you needed some experience. And he said to me, a guy I work with said, why don't you up to the radio station, the student radio station? They'll take you on. And so I did. And I ended up working there for 5 years. And that's where I did live radio for the first time. That's where I got into broadcasting. And it was just amazing. I think radio, that joy of performance and having to think on your feet and all of those different things. And I love interviewing. That's one of my favorite things of all things, just to listen and have the back and forth like we're having. So I was really lucky, to get opportunities in New Zealand. And I kept doing that, which in a way, I'm really glad how things happened, after I had my daughter. I just had a bit more time when I could write. So, she sort of changed everything. I think that can be a natural moment in your life when you reassess things and go, oh, what do I want to do? And I love podcasts. I love podcasts because, they're so intimate and they're so fun, and you can have as many different types of podcasts, as there are people. And the stuff that we do allows for interviewing, scripting, we can do all sorts of things with it. And, so long as you don't mind working with your husband, but some of us are martyrs to the cause, Hilary, as you know.
I've been there. Yes.
You have. You've done that.
I've done that.
And New Zealand's a great place to work, like it's around the same size as Ireland, it's a different culturally, but same in lots of ways as well.
I want to finish out this interview with the Live Wild quickfire round. Are you ready for this? Okay.
I think, am I ever going to be ready? I've entertained American tourists in County Clare when I was 14 years old. I can do it. I
believe in you. I've got your back, Noelle. I believe in you.
I know you do. Okay.
Okay. So Live Wild, the whole, idea behind Live Wild is that I'm really interested in people like yourself who have forged a life for themselves, a career for themselves outside of the regular kind of box, we'll say. The questions are relevant to that. All right. What's your favorite book and why? I know the answer to this, but tell us.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to say Dracula. I'm going to say Dracula by Bram Stoker because it was a book when I read, when I was 14, I read it when I was in second year at St. Angela's, and it just had an indelible effect on me that, I'm still coming to terms with. It was my first kind of experience of being frightened, being turned on, being excited. It's absolutely formative, and it's a great story. It's a great, rattles along. So I'm going to say Bram Stoker's Dracula, closely followed by Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, if I had to pick a runner-up.
I'm going to give you a little bit of information here.
Okay.
What's my favorite story?
What's your favorite story? Oh my goodness. I don't know.
Bram
I
Stoker's
do not
Dracula.
know. No.
Yes.
Hilary.
I
Oh
know.
my goodness.
I don't think we connected over this in school, but I read it and I went, shit, I didn't even know this. Yes.
Oh my goodness. What do you love about it? What makes it your favorite?
For me, it's more the film for me. I really love
the Coppola film.
The Coppola film with
1992.
Yeah.
Yes, Keanu, wonderful. Jonathan Harker.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Winona Ryder.
Winona, our girl Winona. Yeah. Gary Oldman. Anthony Hopkins.
Gary Oldman playing the most incredible Dracula. I suppose having been through a lot of therapy, I could probably pick it apart a bit better now. But I do think that maybe there was a part of me that wanted to be rescued.
Oh, yeah. This is an absolute. He'd come, he would turn you into a vampire, take you back to Transylvania, stepping out of your ordinary life into fantasy. I'll tell you something really funny before we go on to the next question. I was home in Ireland. My sister got married last month. It was great. We had an amazing wedding in Garyvaux. But afterwards, I went to Whitby, where Bram Stoker wrote a lot of Dracula and set part of Dracula. And they have this thing called the Dracula Experience, which is basically just like, it's £5 and you walk through this. It's like the ghost train in Youghal. It's all these like puppets of Gary Oldman screaming at you. Amazing. So and he's got the red coat on. You'd love it. It's like a paper mache Gary Oldman just sort of yelling at you. And his face turns up as a hologram as well. It's fantastic. Recommend.
I love that. Noelle, what do you stand for?
Oh, what do I stand for? The truth, as much as I can tell it, and, as much as I can live it, and as much as I can help other people tell it if they want to tell their stories. But yeah, the truth, however subjective that is.
Everyone's truth is different, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that can be, confronting sometimes, but yeah.
If you were to distill yourself down to an essence, what would your essence be? White musk, possibly?
You cracker. Oh, you cracker. Dewberry was a bit strong, wasn't it? It was, I really like, tuberose, which is almost like it's floral. It's a flower and it's almost too strong, but that's what I really love about it. I love that a little goes a very long way. So I'm going to say, and it's quite, it's a bit luxy. I like that about it. And it's very, it's a lovely perfumed flower. So I might say tuberose or with a closely followed by white musk. Closely. Very closely. Very
close second. What's the wildest thing you've ever done?
Besides that school tour to County Clare. I went to the Amazon and I caught a snake. I caught a giant anaconda. What? I can't remember. I don't think I put that in Grand. I didn't. I should. I went on a reality TV show. And the format was that this is, during a period of my life where I really was saying yes to everything. So, certain lack of discernment there. They made me sign a form before I went saying, if anything happens to you, we're completely indemnified. Oh my goodness. The format of the show was that you turn up at the airport and you don't know where you're going and you don't know who with. And you're paired with someone else and you're given a mission. And my mission was to go down the Amazon on a boat with this herpetologist, a snake guy, and find a giant anaconda. And Hilary, I was so naive in lots of ways. I thought they'd just plant the snake at a certain point, and then we'd have to take it on the boat or something. And I didn't realize that actually, no, we had to go and find the snake, and the snake was in no mood to be found. So things got tenser and tenser. But the funny thing about it was it was one of those reality TV shows that it was all about your discomfort, that's what made the good TV. But what they didn't know is that, like, I really love animals and particularly reptiles. And
Wow.
I was very excited to be going to catch a snake. So I had to pretend to be scared a lot of the time, because I knew that if they realized I was okay with snakes, they'd find something else to torment me with, because that's kind of how they were. And there's lots of other things that I really hate. So I just sort of pretended. But actually, we caught the snake. And because it was an anaconda, I wouldn't do it again, because I don't think it's not a great idea to go and bother the wildlife, in the Amazon for a television series. But anacondas are constrictors. They don't bite. So I knew it would be okay. And then we were collecting it for a zoo, which in the end didn't want it because it was the wrong color. This was the feedback that we got afterwards. So the world of sort of, anacondas is obviously a lot more competitive and discerning than I had thought. But that's probably the wildest thing I've done. And stay up this late now too.
Because it's 10:30 p.m. your time.
Yeah. So that's very late. That's just later than, going to the Amazon. That's wilder than that. Definitely.
What's the one thing you do every day that helps you live wild and free?
Oh, I love this question. Probably listen to the birds. Like, New Zealand has an extraordinary bird population because of the way the land here evolved and developed. There were no indigenous predators. So a lot of the birds are flightless birds. A lot of the native birds are beautiful. And my daughter's really into birds. And I was thinking you might ask me this question. So I went onto her bedroom, and my favorite of all New Zealand birds, and there's 2 of them in our garden at the moment, and I thought you wouldn't know what they look like. So she's colored them in. And this is a tui. It's called a tui, and it has the most extraordinary call. It sounds like someone opening a door, but also whistling and chirping at the same time. It's just,
wow.
So if your viewers, they may be familiar with New Zealand flora and fauna, but if they're not, this is a tui. The colors are pretty much right. I mean, they have this amazing iridescent plumage. So just the birds, like, I was a bit stressed today, and I went out to the garden, and there were 2 tui out there, and I just listened to them. And there's such freedom in birds, like, you can't think of anything freer or wilder.
Absolutely.
So
Wow.
Yeah. Birds.
Noelle McCarthy, it has been so wonderful to catch up on a personal level, but just to even, talk about the book and what's coming up next. I will definitely dig out stuff for your second book. I would love to try and do that.
Please. And we need to talk about Dracula. Like, that's a sidebar conversation that we need to have.
That's a whole other podcast.
Hilary Rose. Absolutely. Thank you. I love what you do. You have always been the most effervescent and intelligent, presence. And I love seeing you bloom and flourish. It's so cool, Hilary.
Really, likewise. When you were like debating the Prime Minister of New Zealand, everyone here was like, do you see what was doing? Oh my gosh. Amazing.
No, they weren't. Thank you.
So
That's those were very cozy chats. They were I wasn't debating it.
Amazing. Well done, you. You're so incredible. You're so incredible.
Thank you. It's been beautiful. It's been so lovely to talk to you.
Absolutely.
And I love listening to the podcast. Lyra was amazing, wasn't she?
Oh, she's so great. She's
wears high boots. Same. She's the best.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Love what you do, Hilary.
Thank you, sweetie. You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for being here. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed making these episodes. Thank you, as always, to our amazing guests. A special thank you to Aoife McNamara, my co-producer extraordinaire from Imagine Media. Please like, share, subscribe, and rate us. It all really helps. And remember, this content is for education and entertainment purposes. In short, it's not gospel. I always say, take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Always question everything and do your own research.